Hey guys, this is Tyler here. I'm here in Estonia. I want to discuss a topic here, and that is why the PUA movement declined in North America, USA, and Canada in the past 5 years, and how it also ushered in and helped grow MGTOW philosophy. Okay, many people here are probably familiar with PUA, pickup artist is what it stands for. And PUA was a concept from like the early 2000s, even late 90s. We had guys like Strauss and Rouge V is pretty well known. You had guys from like Street Attraction, YouTube channel. These guys were basically about teaching kind of the art of seduction, we might say, and using behavioral cues to try get a woman to go on a date with you and also to get into the bedroom. And that was basically the gist of PUA. Now, it's of course still used nowadays, but not nearly as common as it was like 5 or 10 years ago. It's really died down a lot. And in some countries, almost totally, especially with the epidemic we're experiencing at the moment, it's became much less common than it was even 3 years ago. PUA, I think, served some usefulness, was effective to teach guys some basic game, to help them understand how to create a better dynamic, to get on a date, especially younger guys. But at a certain point, kind of loses its value. It's whether it's for older guys or for guys that are beyond a certain point in a relationship, it doesn't really have as much value. We saw like in US and Canada 4 or 5 years ago, Rouge V was exceptionally well known at that point. He had been written about actually in Time magazine and was one of the most sought out people on Twitter. He was doing tours all around the country, around the world, his game tours that he did. This was around the same time as this Me Too movement that was going on. I think the Me Too movement was kind of the era that changed the course of game of the PUA movement, how the media had changed their opinion, mainstream media had changed their opinion on this particular thing to get girls interested in you. They just saw it in a different light. The whole mindset about this wasn't like what it was like in the early 2000s. PUA became very frowned upon. It also became associated with like the manosphere, with more conservative or libertarian school of thought. And so at that point, I think it was kind of on the decline. It was effective to a degree, like I said, but it did also help usher in MGTOW philosophy. If we look at guys like Sandman, when he was starting to get real big, it was around the same time that this decline started, and also the Me Too movement in America and Canada. It's very coincidental, it was around the same time. This, of course, was one aspect happening in the US. Now, there are other factors, though, happening at the same time. There was like online dating was really taking off. Girls didn't have to be sought out in person, face to face. People could seek them out through their phone. Social media was becoming bigger, and social media was also being used as a validation tool for women. And there are also couples meeting this way, but just the attention in itself was being given through this social media to the woman, so they weren't probably as interested in going on dates with guys that had just randomly approached them in person. There's also the fact that guys were becoming aware, this is in conjunction with Me Too, that they could get hit with harassment charges. This could mean them getting jail time, getting fired from jobs, getting kicked out of schools, any number of things for just simply approaching a woman. And guys were questioning, is it worth it? Is it worth me approaching if I can lose my job? If I could get kicked out of university? And many realized it wasn't, and they just stopped. And also, it was losing its effectiveness. That's the main thing, I think, because it had become so mainstream and popularized for so many years. It was on movies and television, 10 to 15 years now. Guys were like, this isn't working anymore. Maybe if you were like the 9 or 10 Chad, you were flexing the expensive car, private jet, yeah, of course, then it would, of course, work. But in many cases, it wasn't working for guys, and that was the main thing why they were moving away from this. And I think also related to what I just said about that Chad, people were also realizing, both guys and girls, that it was very fake. It was kind of flexing a lifestyle that wasn't often real, kind of like we see in online dating. guys were presenting themselves in a way that was fake, and both men and women were realizing this. Of course, it was more so women. They were realizing that these guys were kind of faking it till they made it, so to speak. Just for this reason, they weren't interested. They could kind of see through the guys and didn't take the bait. And all of these factors kind of worked together and made it much less effective. Another factor also, if we look at, say, the year 2000, 2002, the overall level of attractiveness of the average woman was in decline. Yes, I understand it's a two-pronged problem. It's in a population you have men and women, and generally, you do see kind of a correlation. In the countries I've lived, whether it was Chile, Argentina, Russia, Estonia, US, generally speaking, there isn't a correlation there. I mean, if you have a lot of attractive women, you're going to have a lot of good-looking men. So I'm not just singling out women here. But without doubt, the overall attractiveness of women, and some of these were factors they could control. Just like men can control, they can control how well they take care of their body and their skin, their hair, all of these things. And it was, of course, lower than it was 15 years before. There were less women that were as attractive for men to seek out, and there were less of them. And so the ones that were becoming actually like special, as crazy as it is. I've heard that recently in the US. It's really bad. I haven't been back to the US in a while. I now live in Eastern Europe. It's quite different in this part of the world, but because the overall attractability had gone down, men just didn't find many women attractive, so this in itself was caused men to not be interested in pursuing dating. And many men also saw it as kind of a temporary fix to their problems. Yeah, they may be able to get on a date, a few dates, maybe get in the bedroom, but were they still going to be with this person a year later, 3 years later? Were they really interested in this person, like long term? Perhaps not. And I think there are other movements and philosophies that were coming along. I think we saw like the MGTOW philosophy and other more red pill based movements that were competing against PUA communities, and they were also based on philosophies that had more substance, that were more about finding long-term fulfillment in your own pursuits. And it wasn't about finding validation from another person, but in yourself. And especially for older men, and as men were getting older, especially Generation X, these guys were seeking out something that I think was more substantial. There was a stronger core there. And MGTOW philosophy was a better alternative. I think it's just provided more substance for guys out there. And now more younger guys also, of course, are part of MGTOW, and I think it will just continue to grow in the near future. North America and Canada, of course, these were two of the major countries where PUA started, and it became bigger. It also started the decline. And I would say this decline was also seen in other countries around the world, and it will probably continue in decline. It's no question online dating has absolutely replaced it. PUA can teach them some good skills, but as a long-term, but it's not an alternative to weak points in your life or to weaknesses that you need to improve, perhaps adjustments you need to make to your life. PUA won't make you at core level a stronger guy, and this is just something to understand. But this is my commentary on this topic, and I look forward to your feedback below. Thank you.